Welcome to Jets Talk. My name's Ryan. I'll be your pilot. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. Boys and girls, this sucks. There's no other way to frame this. The New York Jets have lost their star quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, torn Achilles, done for the season. The Jets fans, the team, everyone is reeling, trying to figure out what's going to happen for the New York Jets. What quarterbacks should they go after? Looking at some trade options, looking at some free agent options. But I want to bring you a top 10 list. This is coming from Sports Illustrated, so I want to go over the list, kind of work through it little by little, and then at the end, I'll give you guys my thoughts on what I think the Jets should do at the quarterback position. So let's hop over into the list here. As you can see, Aaron Rodgers, torn Achilles, top 10 options for the New York Jets. So they start off with some trade options. The top one on the list, they have Jameis Winston. Winston is probably the best option for the Jets among the 10 quarterbacks listed here. He checks many boxes, experienced quarterback with a knack for creating plays downfield. As we saw Monday night, all Garrett Wilson needs is to have the ball thrown near his vicinity, and he'll do the rest. Winston had plenty of success throwing bombs to Mike Evans during his time with the Buccaneers. Winston, however, had issues protecting the football. He had a whopping 30 interceptions in 2019, but that might not be an issue with how dominant the Jets defense was or has been under Saleh. Winston has 80 career starts under his belt with 139 touchdowns, 96 interceptions. It might cost the Jets a mid-round draft pick to trade for Winston, but New Orleans might be willing to listen with Taysom Hill on the roster to back up Derek Carr. So Jameis Winston, to me, I understand the allure of him. He was the number one overall pick in his draft class. He's had the 30 for 30 season. The guy is a very electric quarterback in terms of, moving the ball downfield, high-flying offense under Todd Monken down in Tampa Bay. But when I see those interceptions, I think that's what you have to kind of dial in on. Like, we've got our turnover-prone quarterback in Zach Wilson already. Do we want to, trade a pick for another guy that turns the ball over at a high clip? Maybe that's kind of been coached out of him over the last few years. Maybe you argue, well, Zach turns the ball over and doesn't get you any points, where Winston, if he's turning the ball over, at least he is still also getting you points at other points in the game. I like Winston. I would consider it. I don't know. Maybe a 4th round pick might be where I would feel comfortable with this. Again, I don't really like Jameis Winston. I don't love his attitude. There's a lot of maturity issues coming out of college, and I'm sure he's probably beyond that at this point. He's kind of had a little bit of humble pie sitting behind, quarterbacks the last few years. So maybe this is an option for the Jets. It's out of conference, so I think that would make a lot of sense for the Saints. And I think he's on a 1-year deal, I'm pretty sure. So you're going to be able to get him seemingly, because they're going to let him walk at the end of the season. Derek Carr doesn't really miss games, which Aaron Rodgers doesn't usually miss games either. So all you guys saying, oh, he should have gone after Derek Carr, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Next up, they're talking Malik Willis from the Titans. Titans selected Willis over Will Levis as the backup for Ryan Tannehill to start the season, but Willis wasn't drafted by first-year GM Ran Carthon, who spent a 2nd-round pick on Levis. Perhaps Carthon will do a solid for Saleh, who worked with Carthon during their days with the 49ers. Willis, a 2022 3rd-round pick, struggled as a rookie, but he displayed improvements during the preseason. I haven't seen enough out of Willis to make me want to hand the ball off to him. Like, this doesn't seem overly exciting to me. I guess it could be an option this seems to be like more of an option if like Zach gets hurt and you want to have like another young gun on the roster. I'm not really in on Malik Willis. I would pass on this option. Then you got Tyler Huntley from the Ravens. Huntley had a rough summer and found himself competing with Josh Johnson for the number 2 quarterback job behind Lamar Jackson. Huntley was also tabbed as the number 3 emergency quarterback for the season opener versus the Texans, but that was partially because he's been dealing with a hamstring injury. If the Ravens have soured on their Pro Bowl quarterback, in case you forgot, Huntley surprisingly made the Pro Bowl last season, maybe they'll consider trading him to the Jets. Huntley started 4 games in each of the past 2 seasons. This is someone that I would consider. I would take a look at. I think Douglas's relationship with Baltimore might lend to some conversation here. I'm intrigued by this because it's a mobile option. I like the mobile quarterback side of things, and I do like what we've seen from Huntley over the last few years. And heck, Pro Bowl is a popularity contest, but the fact that you have enough fans wanting this guy to be in that game, I guess, is something. It's more Pro Bowl votes than we've gotten from Zach Wilson. This is one I would consider. I don't know what it's going to cost to get him. I would think a mid-round pick, especially if they feel like they're kind of happy with Josh Johnson over in Baltimore. The next one, Cooper Rush from the Cowboys. Rush might be the odd man out in Dallas after the team traded for Trey Lance to eventually back up Dak Prescott. There could be an opportunity here for the Jets to acquire Rush, who kept the Cowboys afloat with a 4-1 record last season while Prescott was sidelined in 2022. Rush completed only 58% of his passes last season, but he has found ways to win games. So Rush, to me, I haven't watched enough of Rush, I'll say that, but from my understanding when talking to Cowboys fans is there were a lot of points left on the board with Rush under center. So I don't know if that's just a product of a really good Cowboy team, similarly to how the Jets carried the weight of maybe an inexperienced or underperforming Zach Wilson. Where does that kind of fall? 58% completion percentage is not really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for like game manager. I want protects the football and high completion percentage. And this doesn't feel like that. Then you got Davis Mills on the Texans. Mills might not be needed in Houston, with Case Keenum serving as the mentor for rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud. Mills had many highs and lows the past 2 seasons as the Texans' starting quarterback, but he has 26 career starts and threw 3,118 yards last season. On the other hand, Mills had a league-high 15 interceptions. So again, I kind of get the feeling we're not going to go after like a real young quarterback here. This is not someone that like tickles the pickle, if you will. Especially same draft class, right? As Zach Wilson. I don't know if that necessarily matters one way or the other, but I would say none of this list outside of maybe Tyler Huntley would be the one that kind of grabs my attention a little bit more. And then you got Brandon Allen, 49ers. 49ers probably wouldn't mind helping out their former defensive coordinator, but they know better than any other team the importance of having 3 quarterbacks on the roster. It's hard seeing the 49ers going with only Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold after losing their quarterback in the NFC title game last season. If Allen is available, he might be a decent option to compete with Wilson. The former Bengal and Bronco has 9 career starts with a career completion percentage of 56.7 and 10 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. Again, this is not someone that's really exciting to me. I want someone that can like lead us. Do any of these names, as far as trade-wise, really make you think you might be able to contend? Maybe Jameis Winston's probably like the guy of all these players right here. I don't know. I guess he might cost the most on this list. I would say him and Huntley for the trading for quarterbacks are the 2 that I would really consider. One player that's not on here that I really wish was, and maybe he's not even remotely a trade option, is Gardner Minshew. I feel like Gardner Minshew has a really high completion percentage. It was a player that I would have liked to have seen the Jets go after in free agency, but it didn't really make a whole lot of sense because you were obviously going after either Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers, the outside shot at Lamar Jackson, things of that nature. And Gardner Minshew was kind of that, a rung or 2 down. He did have to come in play this past weekend for Anthony Richardson for a few snaps, so they may not be so inclined to move him because they are looking for that type of maybe safety net for in the event Richardson winds up going down. Now, I like Gardner Minshew. I think he was displaced by a generational prospect in Trevor Lawrence. Then he sat behind Jalen Hurts, who played MVP caliber quarterback last year, and now he's just stuck behind like the not number one, but like a high draft pick in Anthony Richardson. So he's never really had the opportunity to shine the way you may want him. And I think he's got some kind of moxie about him. I would be on board as far as a trade goes with Gardner Minshew, even though he's not on this list. So bonus player, I guess, here. Popular name I've seen pop up for free agents, that's Carson Wentz, the 2016 number 2 overall pick. Might be one of the better quarterbacks on this list, but it's concerning how poorly he played at times with the Colts and Commanders the past 2 seasons. Wentz hasn't been the same quarterback since losing his job to Nick Foles, perhaps another option for the Jets in Philadelphia. Wentz has a strong arm, and maybe his mistakes from his erratic play might not hurt the Jets too much with the dominant defense. So Hurts is someone that from a locker room perspective, I'm not crazy about. But if Joe Douglas decides, yeah, okay, I'm on board with this, I'm all right with him because Douglas was with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia not when he was drafted, but his first year. Douglas was brought in after that draft, like I want to say it was 2 months later or a month and a half later onto Philadelphia staff. So he didn't have a hand in selecting Wentz, but to some degree, he felt comfortable being on the Eagles while he was clearly the quarterback of the future. And he'll at least have the best insight in terms of what Carson Wentz is in the locker room and what he can and can't be on the field. So while I would say Wentz is kind of nice because he's not going to cost you anything in terms of a trade, he provides high upside. This is another top 2 pick in a draft, similar to like a Jameis Winston. But again, he's not on a roster right now, so that kind of sort of tells you something. So I mean, Carson Wentz, I don't mind. And you see Mr. Joe Flacco right here. Joe Flacco, the Super Bowl winning quarterback, is an option because he's familiar with the team after starting 4 games for the Jets last season, but he failed to get the offense going and might have been worse than Wilson in 2022. If New York favors familiarity, perhaps Flacco will be the choice, but he might be added only to serve as Wilson's experienced backup. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, if you want to have Flacco be the backup to Zach Wilson, okay, but under no circumstances do I want to see Joe Flacco take the field. There's no part of me that wants to watch any bit of that. I would rather roll the dice on like anyone else than Joe Flacco. So I'm going to say no to that one. Matt Ryan, this is another interesting one. The former MVP is currently a TV analyst, but he hasn't officially retired. Ryan has plenty of success in the NFL, but might not be an ideal option with how poorly he played for the Colts last season. He didn't have much arm strength during his lone season in Indianapolis. I feel like Ryan, for me, is the backup mentor I would prefer, because at least he can talk a little bit about Super Bowl, a little bit about some of his experiences. He has some familiarity with Jeff Ulbrich. Apparently, he's run a little bit of this similar style offense from what I've read. But I don't want to like anoint him the starter. That's not where I'm kind of headed on this one. Matt Ryan, in an emergency situation, like Zach Wilson goes down and he can step in, sure. But again, he's going to have to get the ball out really fast. He's not a very mobile guy, so that doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. This is a really interesting option here. Colt McCoy, the longtime backup quarterback, is a quality option, but he's reportedly dealing with an elbow injury, which played a role as to why he was released by the Cardinals a few weeks ago. McCoy, a 13-year veteran, also dealt with injuries last season. If he's healthy, he has plenty left to offer with 56 career games, including 36 career starts. This is an interesting option. I'm pretty sure McCoy's got a pretty decent completion percentage, so maybe that's something you consider as far as backup things go when considering who to bring in place, or maybe in conjunction with someone like Zach Wilson. But across the board, all these options don't make me feel very good. I very much would prefer, I think, to roll with Zach Wilson and kind of see what he has learned, sink or swim. Now, at the same point, I'm not going to say, look, you got to tie your wagon to Zach the entire time. But one, you get to see him in Dallas. It's not like you're bringing in a quarterback right now that's going to be able to supplant Zach for that game, or probably even the Patriot game week 3. So you're going to see Zach at least the next 2 weeks. And I think that's where the Jets would like to be. This guy's been through camp with us. The players at least seem to have a little bit more confidence in him, or at least, I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's the divide in the locker room the way there was last year. And the way Zach kind of has handled his opportunities this offseason with Rodgers, I think there's a team lifting aspect to this. Like, I think Garrett Wilson is going to want, not just Garrett Wilson, but like all the players on board. It seemed like they were rallying behind Zach because they know he's kind of like their only option right now. If there becomes an opportunity where a Matthew Stafford becomes available, or I don't want to say the name, if Tom Brady says, I want to come back for a season near the trade deadline, and he's just like, not even near the trade deadline, but at some point, and the Jets are like, oh shit, we might like do well, but clearly someone gets hurt. I think it's more so like if Zach gets hurt, maybe that becomes an option. But like, I do not want to sell my soul to the Tom Brady devil. I can't do that. But you owe it to your team to have quality quarterback play. And you can't let Zach stink it up. If that's what ultimately ends up happening, you're going to have to make a move. You have to. There's 52 other guys on this roster. As much as I like Zach Wilson and I believe that he can be the guy at some point in the future, granted, this is a lot earlier than I was hoping to see him play, you got to do right by the other 52 guys. You can't trot Zach Wilson out there the same way you did last year. So you're going to have to make sure you are at least dialed in to some alternative options here heading forward. So if I had to give my options as far as a traded quarterback, I would look maybe to a Stafford who was not available initially, but if the Rams season goes down the tubes, maybe they're more inclined to make that trade. A Gardner Minshew, should he become available, I think is interesting. From this list, I'm probably looking at Minshew or Huntley. Not Minshew or Huntley, sorry, Winston or Huntley. And then free agent-wise, I think I'm only really looking at Carson Wentz, and that's only if Joe Douglas is feeling pretty confident about him as a player, because I don't want to bring in a locker room cancer or headache of a player just to maybe have the same-ish success that you might have with Zach Wilson. Remember, Zach Wilson had this team humming at least a little bit while we had all our offensive weapons. And then you lose Brees, you lose AVT, you lost Corey Davis. Like the whole offensive line was decimated. Becton's out, Brown's out. You're on left tackle 5 and 6 or whatever we were on last year. So maybe with a healthy roster, a year under his belt, a legitimate quarterback coach in Aaron Rodgers, a new offensive system with Nathaniel Hackett, maybe we figure out a way to run some RPOs with Zach Wilson or something along those lines. I'm sick to my stomach about this whole Aaron Rodgers news. There was so much that we had planned for this season and the seasons going forward. Hopefully this is not something that, I hope he doesn't contemplate retirement. I completely understand if he does, because 40 years old with an Achilles injury is not an easy thing to overcome. But guys, let me know, of this list, is there someone that jumps off the page at you? Is there a player that's not on this list that you would prefer the Jets either trade for or pick up? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.